All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Let's go ahead and get started with the Planning and Development Board meeting of Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. Chris, will you please lead us with the pledge? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Litch, absent. Mr. Harper,
Present.
Mr. Buani,
Present.
Mr. Simon,
Present.
Mr. McGuire,
Here.
Mr. Sobel,
Present.
and Mr. Ramicchio.
She was really close, so you got to give her that one.
A+.
And Chair Rosecrans.
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, we have an agenda. Any changes to it from the city folks? Anybody? Nothing? Amanda, you good? All right, may I entertain
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have one addition. Under new business, I'd like to add the addition of Meadows PUD Park discussion and recommendation to the commission under new business.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, that was Meadows and then
Meadows PUD Park discussion and recommendation to commission.
What would the discussion be? Will we be able to provide us with information on that?
Of course.
Okay. So I have a motion to amend the agenda. Anyone want to second that? Well, we'll have to second it. So please, someone.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Okay. Thank you. Let me write that down.
Did you get that, Amanda?
All right. Okay, at this time, I will ask for, anybody have anything in regards to the minutes from last meeting? All right, I'll take
I have one thing.
hit it.
My last name is MCQ with a Q, not G, and it's in pages 9, 10, various pages throughout. If that could be fixed, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, not a bad one. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you very much. Do you want to go ahead and swear everyone in, Mr. Attorney?
These are legislative items, so there's no swearing in.
Whee! Let's roll. All right, any announcements from staff? Anything to report?
You have a few. Thank you, Board Chair. First, I want to thank IT for letting me be present virtually. I'm actually at the Redevelopment Conference in Daytona. Otherwise, I would be with you all. So hi from Daytona. Second, I'd like to thank the board for their input at the last meeting on the Parks and Rec Master Plan. I just wanted to give you a status update. They are currently holding another steering committee sometime this month, and their targeted completion date is February of 2023. So that project is moving along. Next, I can't see the audience, but I think Jae-Yoon Kim is in the audience. We do have a new staff member. Jay is our new principal planner. She is filling the seat that I vacated recently. She comes to the city with over 10 years of experience in both planning, and she is a registered landscape architect. So she's bringing a new skill set to the group, and we're really excited to have her. And then lastly, we sent an email out to the board members looking for scheduling for the next coming months. It seems so far that we do not have a quorum for either the November or December meeting. However, there will be business that would need to be tended to before the end of the year. I would like to suggest that the board decide on a special meeting date sometime between the regularly scheduled November date and December date. I did talk to the clerk, and we would be able to hold the meeting on either December 7th, 14th, or 15th. That's all I have.
Hey, Amanda, may I make a comment? Can you just change my email address? I keep getting emails to an old email, and that's probably
Yes, we
why I
did
didn't
make that
respond
note
back.
and it should be officially changed now. So if you get any more emails, please let me know.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll work through that part.
Just want to mention, I don't think I received those emails, so if,
Yeah, have we received those?
I didn't
Yeah,
receive,
so
I
I
didn't receive
can-
anything. on
yeah.
that email.
Okay, well,
That email was part of the correspondence to get this email set. So the first part of the email was about scheduling this. The second part of the email was for attendance availability for November and December. And we heard back from some, not all of you, and most of the responses that we got were maybe. So we can't confirm a quorum for either of those meetings so far.
all right, we'll see if we can work it out tonight.
yeah, I'll check it after. Yeah.
December 15th works for me.
You said 7th, 14th, and 15th, right? All right, we'll deal with that at the end of the meeting. Let's try and knock this thing out. All right, that's it, Amanda. Thank you very much. No old business to discuss, so we'll move on to new business. Are we taking these all three at a time here for the presentation?
Are separate items. They will be presented and voted on one by one.
Voted on separately, presented separately? All right, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and hear 7A.
Okay, thank you, Chair Rosecrans. For the record, Elizabeth Issa, Senior Planner with the Development Department, and I will be presenting the building height amendment to you this evening. Next slide. Okay, to start, I'll just give you a little background on the redevelopment planning that has occurred over the last 20 years. In 2000, the maximum building height in the city was 100 feet and the maximum density was 40 units to the acre. And there were some public workshops held to create the Federal Highway Redevelopment Plan, which was adopted in 2001. In 2002, there was an LDR update to implement the changes that were recommended in that plan. In 2002 was also the year when the city adopted MUH and MUL, mixed use high and mixed use low. This was the first adoption of heights as we see them today, which was 150 feet in the core. In 2006, the Boynton Beach Boulevard Corridor Plan expanded mixed use along Boynton Beach Boulevard. The plan created a progression from 95 to downtown. The intensities were at their lowest by 95, and then the highest when they met downtown. Later that year, another distribution of mixed uses, heights, and densities were adopted. They split the existing mixed use high and mixed use low and created MUL 1, 2, 3, and H. In 2016, there was a series of public meetings that were held that led to a consolidation of all the existing CRA plans into one consolidated document. And then in 2016 and 2017, there were further LDR amendments that broke down the zoning districts further. The updates added MU4, which was another step underneath the maximum height of 150 feet. The distribution of height and density allowed for lower heights than the maximum to be allowed in the MU4 district. Next slide. So how did we get here today? On May 17th, we had a history of height presentation to the City Commission. After that, on June 25th, there was a height workshop that was held with the City Commission. On August 24th, there was a height workshop held here with the Planning and Development Board. And I'm sorry, the presentation is a little outdated. We were supposed to have a meeting on September 27th, but there was a hurricane. So tonight we're having the code amendment presentation, and then the adoption hearings will be October 8th and November 1st for the City Commission. Next slide. So here is I'm going to explain the actual amendment to you. It's pretty straightforward. I would like to point out that my presentation is incorrect as far as MU1. It states that the maximum building height is 55 feet. It's actually 45 feet, but that's not the district that is being affected right now. So the change on the chart, you can see that currently the maximum height in MU4 is 100 feet and the maximum height in mixed use core is 150 feet. The proposed, the accompanying ordinance proposes to change the maximum building height in MU4 to 80 feet and the maximum height in mixed use core to 85 feet. And then there's a footnote, footnote 4, that is being modified as part of this amendment as well. Next slide. And so basically the footnote states that any use or structure with height in excess of the height maximum that was in lawful existence or vested with an approved development order at the time of the adoption of ordinance number, whatever this ordinance gets, whatever the ordinance number is associated with this amendment, shall not be construed as non-conforming as a result of the ordinance and can continue until such time as a major development application or major site plan modification is approved or a development order or vested project expires. And that is the amendment, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Hey, Jay, we'll start on the outside.
Okay, here we go. Couple questions I have for you. We are in many ways in competition with our neighboring communities for development, for monies to come into the community. How do we compare with these new height limitations you're proposing to Delray, Boca, you know, probably the two most relevant communities?
Okay, so that was in my presentation at the last meeting. I don't have that on me. I could get the answers for you. I will say Delray, the maximum height is typical in the downtown area is 4 stories or 55 feet. There is one zoning district that allows up to 85 feet. That is their MROC district along Congress. It's kind of like a mixed use district. Now, Boca has a much higher maximum. I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but it's.
You're about to be rescued.
Oh.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, like I said, yeah, Delray has a maximum of 85 feet, but that's only in the MROC zoning district. Boca Raton goes up to 160 feet.
Okay, the corollary question. Did you talk to any developers to get any insight into what this will do to the viability of Boynton Beach to attract new money, new buildings, new opportunities for the residents?
I personally did not. I'm not sure if Amanda did or not.
I can answer that.
Okay.
You're just making sure you guys can hear me?
We're good.
Yes.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you. No, this code amendment was actually directed by the city commission. However, like we talked about in our workshop about height is just one of very many aspects of development in terms of your developability of a property. Some of the other major factors include density and FAR. So this is just one of the entitlements in a whole slew of regulatory tools that we have to shape a city. So no, for this specific amendment, we did not reach out to developers. However, I will say in terms of trends, the development that we've seen in Boynton Beach overall, it has not been 150 feet. I think we all know that the tallest building is Casa Costa, and that was one of the first buildings that achieved that height. And I believe Marina Village is around second place when it comes to height. Since those two buildings, however, most of the heights that have been approved in the downtown range from about 80 to 90 feet. So even with the availability of height, we haven't seen it been being taken advantage of yet. It doesn't mean that that couldn't have changed in the future, or that there might not be redevelopment that would go to a taller height. But the history so far of height just hasn't reached 150 with the exception of those two buildings.
Okay. Amanda, the last question, then I quit. What was the motivation for doing this? I mean, you've had that 150 feet for, what is it, 10, 12 years, or almost 20 years? Why now?
I think the short answer is that we have heard a desire from the commission to lower heights. And I believe that the commission is speaking on behalf of the public and their constituents. And you know, we're moving forward an amendment that the commission has requested.
Thank you. Cortland?
Yeah, on this proposed chapter 3 footnote here, can you put that into plainer language for me? I want to make sure I get it 100%. And does this specifically apply and written for projects that are on deck?
Amanda,
And we put a couple of things into this language to make sure we weren't taking away rights from things that were already in existence or already approved. So what this does essentially is say that anything that is built now above what is going to be legal, meaning either your 80 or 85 feet, you are allowed to maintain that height, and we won't see you as non-conforming. What that does is allow them to rebuild in any cases of damages or hurricane disaster, acts of God. All of those things would allow existing structures to be rebuilt as existing. That's the first part of it. So things that are existing. The second part is anything that's approved right now would be permitted to remain approved and be built in accordance with their approved plans. So that's the second step of this. So what's existing and what's coming. A nuance that I think you alluded to, if a project is currently submitted, meaning not approved, they will be able to continue under the zoning code that they were submitted under. So let's say if we are actively reviewing a project right now, they are held to the codes as they submitted under. So they would be able to do whatever height was in accordance with the zoning code at the time of their submittal. What this does not allow is for any redevelopment to go to any heights that are above or different than what was originally approved. So for example, if someone came to demo their property and rebuild again, they would now need to meet the current height, which would be the 85 or the 80, depending on which zoning district we're in. Or if you were to demo and rebuild, if you weren't rebuilding exactly what was approved, then again, you would need to meet the current height standards.
Thank you. To clarify, the second part that you were explaining there is that submitted. So is there projects currently submitted that won't be held to this new potential ordinance of a lower height limit?
Possibly. We do have several projects in. I think only one comes, only one relative to the zoning district, that is the Pierce, the affiliated project, or 115, that would fall under this land use and zoning change. However, I do not believe that they are proposing heights above this.
I believe it was 9. I attended the CRA meeting and it was nowhere near 150 feet. That was what was proposed. That's what I recall.
But again, since they are submitted and not approved yet, they would be vested under the code that they submitted. So, I mean, theoretically, under this code, could they come in tomorrow and ask for 150 feet? The answer is yes, but that's highly improbable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to carry on Cortland's conversation. At the last meeting, you gave a great presentation, Amanda, on the same presentation that was given to the commission. And we had a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion, and we understand the will of the commission is to lower the height, and we want to support the commission's will, but at the same time, we want to continue to see projects move forward. One of the discussions we had was zoning in progress. Could you remind us again, zoning in progress, if we were to approve, say, a zoning in progress, that would then, all the projects that are in the pipeline would then have to conform with the new regulations. Is that correct, or am I misspeaking?
I
on
could
that?
explain it the way I understand it, and then I'll hand it over to Sean, the city attorney at this meeting, to give you the legal answer. The way I understand zoning in progress, it essentially allows us the ability to enact an ordinance before it is formally adopted. We usually, I shouldn't say we usually, I have usually seen it used that after P&D approves it, then we start enforcing it already before the city commission goes through final adoption. That's the way we have used that tool. I'll let Sean go into more details, but I want to be clear that I don't believe, and Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe that that would change the fact that if there are plans that are currently submitted already, it wouldn't affect those plans. That would mean tomorrow, if a plan came in, it would now have to meet this ordinance where, normally if we didn't do zoning in progress, it would have to wait until November 1st when this ordinance is formally adopted.
Correct.
Okay, so second part is, Amanda, the CRA plan allows for the increase of 25% in density if they provide a plan that provides workforce housing. Are we going to amend the CRA plan to then reduce that 25% incentive that's there for workforce? Or is the commission going to leave the incentive of 25% if they come in with a workforce?
Currently, the amendment does not amend the workforce housing program. That 25% density is intact, and as far as I know, will remain intact unless there are other direction that comes from the city commission regarding that ordinance. I will say again that since we've had projects that have taken, well, that ordinance hasn't been fully utilized when it comes to building products. But we have seen people plan for utilizing that density and still not meeting the 150 height. So density and height, although are relative, they're not necessarily, tied together as firmly as we may think. People are getting that bonus and still not requiring the height.
Okay, and just lastly, I'd like to just concur. Del Rey has, I believe, 55 feet, was it? The maximum height in their core area was 55 feet. One of the suggestions I made was 48 feet, and I know it was kind of, I think a lot of you said, what, 48 feet? And one of the reasons why I mentioned that, because I mentioned that I thought that all the city buildings should be in the core area, your largest buildings, the governmental buildings, so that they're your anchor pieces. So any other development in the core area, when you want to develop a downtown, I would want to see this be the feature cornerstone of the redevelopment, and then shops and restaurants in this 4-block area. The big conversation that has to be had with the commission, and I would like to see it with the planning board, is the TOD conversation, because when you look at the comp plan, throughout the comp plan, it continually refers to the policy of the city of Boynton Beach is to focus on a TOD in that core area. So we've talked about that there's 1,200 residents in this core area of the TOD. We need 18,000 to even meet the criteria to comply with the TOD. So I think it's time after 20 years that we get off the TOD high horse and be what we want to be, not Boca Raton, not 350 feet that West Palm wants with major transit. If you look at the 20-year rail transportation plans, both for Coastal Link, Tri-Rail, Brightline, we're not in the 20-year plan. They're not coming here. We don't have even the future projections don't bring it here. So let's focus on creating a downtown, get away from talking about high density residential in an area that's just, it's not practical. And let's plan as a city to create this 4 blocks as a destination and create restaurants and shops and make it a destination that folks would want to come here. Build the hotel, continue our town square project with the anchor hotel and the parking garages to support our city staff that's here. And then let's finish towards Ocean Avenue all the way to Federal with shops and a destination. We have this great fishing village motif with the banana boat and 2 Georges. And I've heard that the residents want to see that continue down Lake Avenue. If you look at all the charrettes from 2017, 18, all of the planning sessions with very limited participation, I might add, everybody wanted to keep the density and the heights lower in Boynton Beach. We don't want to be Boca Raton, nor do we want to be West Palm. We have a unique, so if we attract restaurants like the Forrest Gump, the shrimp place, or something unique to fit in with that fishing village, maybe Guy Harvey wants to open a museum or maybe we can carry that theme with our economic development team and we all get together pulling in the same direction and we could finish this area, this core area of downtown and make it a true vibrant destination for the residents, for the people, for us to enjoy. But yet we want visitors. We want that hotel to be vibrant. We want people to visit. We want to have a vibrant economy. But to continue to go down the road of this density, if we don't change the zoning, it's our job to make the recommendation to the commission to change that zoning. And Commissioner Turkins is here and other city leaders are here. This is the will of the commission. We haven't built anything above 100 feet. The recommendations are to go to 80 and 85. I'm going to support the majority of you if that's the way you want to go. I would like for us to be at 48 feet, which makes this the largest building in this core area. And I'm only speaking of the core area, not as the city as a whole, because I do think there's some opportunities with possible transit nodes west of town at the Congress corridor, possibly west of 95 where we have already tri-rail. There are some opportunities there for, still, I don't think we want to ever be 150 feet. So I'll support reducing it, but I have no problem going much lower. And I'll close with this. 25 years ago, I mentioned I had the opportunity serving as the mayor of a city close by. We went through this very similar conversation and we wanted to be, Lake Worth I'm speaking of, wanted to be something different. And it's different, all right, but it's unique in the way that we were able to say no to the developers. I'll add as a footnote that 2 years ago, just before I came on this board, I was listening to a presentation for the changing of the zoning on Lawrence in a PUD area. And one of the things the mayor said, Mayor Grant at the time said, and it really made my hair stand up. Staff was recommending changing the PUD site of Jonathan's Landing back to the original zoning that was designated for that property. And Mayor Grant said to Michael Rumpf, he said, well, why is staff making this recommendation? Don't we let the developers make this recommendation? So when I heard your comments, if we check with the developers, we don't need to check with the developers what we want. We want to decide what we want to determine, what this board and this commission needs to determine what we want to see the vision of Boynton to be. And then the developers can build it. And if they don't like it, they can go to Boca, they can go to West Palm, but we want something unique here. And I'm gonna push for it because I see that we have a great opportunity and I don't want us to miss it because we're missing this real estate cycle already with Town Square fumbling around for the last 4.5 years. So I know the commission's focused on moving forward with it, but let's help them. Let's support them with the recommendations. Let's build a downtown and let's try to encourage the commission to do away with this TOD concept. 18,000 residents in a half-a-mile radius. Do the scaling on how many buildings you would have to build and how dense that would have to be to meet that criteria. Look at it. And then ask yourself, do we really want that here? And if it's going to be workforce housing, are we going to be able to, those that live there going to be able to support the shops? We want people to live here that have money that could support. We want to lift Boynton up. We're not trying to hold Boynton back. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Chris, you want to follow that?
Me. I mean, there was many points that board member Amicio made that I completely agree with, and certainly support as well. And of those, certainly supporting the commission in this effort to make changes, which are in the end a benefit to the aesthetics of Boynton, I think is very positive. And that we should certainly support that. If they're looking to this to make the changes, there's a reason. And like it was said, it was because their constituents are requesting this, or, you know, they're representing their constituents. We're also representing our neighborhoods as well in this. And so naturally, we're going to get a little bit of a bit of a broad spectrum of responses based on what we hear from different people. But what I will, you know, kind of touch on is going back to the footnote in here, Amanda. What I wanted to make sure of is that if an existing project such as Marina Village, Costa Costa, whatever it is now, I think those are really the main two that are really, well, I guess even 500 Ocean too, and some of the newer ones that are breaking ground. If they are deemed existing conforming, I guess is how they would be referred to as, and they currently are not at 150 feet, but at the time of their permitting application, the maximum height was 150 feet. Since they're not considered existing non-conforming, would they be allowed to come in with, and they are held to the height limits at the time of their development and their permitting? Are they then allowed, let's say 500 Ocean came in and said, you know what, we want to go to 150 feet. Are they allowed to do that? You're muted.
Oh my. Amanda, you're muted.
You're muted, Amanda.
No, still no audio.
I could probably answer the question. I could probably answer the question.
Yep,
So you're
fine.
saying, okay, so a project that came in that is currently built less than 150 feet, but as of today would be allowed to,
Currently built or approved.
okay.
Right.
If they wanted to come back in, they could not go to 150 feet after the adoption of this ordinance.
So in a sense, they would be existing non-conforming.
But we're not considering them.
Oh,
Can
there we go.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, Beth, I did not mean to cut you off. Thank you. That is a very important question. I want to make sure it's well understood. What is being considered not non-conforming is the existing building and their existing rights. However, if they come in to do a major amendment or get a new development order that is not currently vested, that counts as a new application, and whatever is going to be built that is new would have to meet the regulations that they are submitted under, which would be under this enacted ordinance of 85 or 80 feet.
Okay, so the new application does not have any tie to the which makes sense. There's no tie to the what I'm trying to do. I just want to verify that there's no chance that these projects can come in and say, well, hey, since we didn't maximize what we could build to, and we're one of the few ones that were in place prior to this being adopted, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of that and go ahead and build this additional, right? So that kind of answers the question.
Exactly what this does not allow. Again, if the existing building is 100 feet and that goes away, and for whatever reason they want to rebuild exactly what they had approved, that is permitted.
Okay.
But they cannot build anything else than what is already approved without meeting today's code.
Okay, and in my experience with development in my day job, that is it's a very similar condition as existing non-conforming, because in that instance, you're allowed to rebuild what you have. You cannot add to or modify unless you're reducing the non-conformity.
Non-conforming issue is partly about what's approved and what's not approved, but it also turns into a funding issue for properties. If they are considered non-conforming, it could lead to some lending issues. So we did feel it was important to put it in there that they are not non-conforming, so not to inhibit any lending rights or cause any issues, because we do want the buildings that are there to remain. And it is not an attempt to remove rights that are already built.
Which also ties to saleability, because some of these projects have already been turned over multiple times, and if they're not existing non-conforming, it reduces the allure of purchasing that property. Okay, thank you. I'm kind of going off of memory from the maps of MU4 and MU Core, which really is this kind of downtown area that we're talking about, and fanning out a little bit up and down US 1. And I think just to kind of tag on to a little bit of board member Amicio's comments, I really think that, you know, a number of years ago, there was a missed opportunity by the previous commissions in not capitalizing on kind of capturing that identity. And now is a really good time. It's almost too late because some projects are already in place that it's going to kind of give a little bit of variation in height, in which I always kind of go back to almost every meeting that really this comes up, and it has to do with the scale and the amount of space that we have to work with in this area, especially up and down Ocean Avenue, Seacrest to let's just say the bridge, because it's a very short distance. There is a lot of single family homes, single story, very few two-story properties in this, let's say 4 to 6 blocks north and south, and within that east to west boundary, that you know, even 85 feet, it almost just doesn't really work in that environment. And as part of the development, I think that I would you know, task the commission to kind of sense what are our opportunities at this time. Can we, you know, consider adjusting some of the scheme or the plan that we've kind of that is already in place, and capture and develop an identity for the town that really, you know, like you said, creates a destination, makes people want to come here, rather than just, you know, 500 ocean after 500 ocean after 500 ocean. That's you know, not pointing out any architectural styles or any particular project or anything, but we don't want to just allow projects. Let's just have a project just to have a project, and you know, nothing ties together. There's no sense of continuity. There's no theme. There's nothing that's, you know, other than you know, there. It just we really need to be able to capture on that. And you know, the businesses that are in place right now on the couple blocks that we do have are not necessarily the type of businesses that generate foot traffic, which the majority of businesses require to survive. In projects that come down to this area, is there a way to kind of get a sense of what these businesses are that are going to go into these retail spaces, instead of just saying we need to provide X amount of square footage, X percentage of square footage for businesses, for retail? If there's a way to develop some sort of a scheme that requires requests, provides for the citizens, provides types of businesses for the residents of the area, just so that we get a little bit of a blend and we don't have, you know, 30 restaurants in a 2-block area, or whatever the case may be. So we don't have, you know, I go to the restaurant and I'm going home, because why am I going to walk around and just see other restaurants? So it doesn't generate foot traffic, doesn't bring people the attraction. I think honestly, there's a, you know, there is an opportunity here that you could over time take and redevelop some of these, there's 2-story apartment buildings, we've got single family homes, and kind of create a very unique old Florida type of a vibe that allows for engineering, architectural consultants, art museums, salons, spas, restaurants. I mean, just a eclectic type stores, just a very a broad range of businesses that could go into and be redeveloped into some of these single family homes that are a block off north or south of these areas. And I point to Stewart, I point to just a number, Melbourne, Cocoa. There's a lot of areas in Florida, West Coast, East Coast, that have capitalized on this, that Florida charm, that small town charm that 30, 40 years ago attracted a lot of people to this area. It was a destination. People moved here because of the charm. They have since turned it into partially what they've left, but that's neither here nor there. That's progress, that's development. But I don't really think that we're considering any of this in any of this. We're just providing requirements or guidelines. So I think it's really the master plan, as if the commission wants to take that up. I think that would be a great step in the right direction. Stepping away from the TOD, I don't think that suits this area. It's the, again, scale. It's too much for the space. And then just the last piece is, I don't know if Amanda or if anyone here from the staff knows the date of permit approval on the Marina Village. Would anyone be able to find that out quickly?
Yeah, I could probably figure it.
Yeah.
Quickly.
And just my knowledge and experience living right down the street, kind of watching it get built from my home, I could see it get taller and taller, is that I want to say that it was developed prior to that adjustment or that raise in the height of the building allowance. So really the question is, we can go through all this now. A new commission comes in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and wants to revisit this. I mean, we're not really, and sometimes there is sway from developers to kind of make an argument for a great reason to have a lot of tall buildings in an area. And by going through this process, adopting these new restrictions, are we really locking in something that's permanent, or is this a short-term verbiage that's just going to get amended later and kind of changed and altered back to another height, 200 feet, whatever it might be? Is that something that that we there's no way we can establish a timeline on any of this thing, because that's it's city code, so you can't really do that. But to what extent are we ensuring that the future doesn't change the
But isn't that up for the future to decide?
It is. That's where it's a tough situation, because this is, go through this whole process and a new commission comes in, or somebody, 4 years from now, it could completely change.
They have to answer to the voters, though.
Yeah, I agree. So that's really all I have to say. And this what I had to say is going to apply to a lot of these. So certainly might follow the next.
I just want to check that you guys can hear me.
We
Yes.
got you, Amanda. Go ahead.
Okay. I do, just because it seems to be a theme, I want to give the board a couple of pieces of information that are going to start being undertaken here soon. It is my understanding that the CRA board has requested the CRA to reopen up the CRA plan, and we do expect that process will start. That is, I think, the appropriate place for a reimagining, reimaging of the city and the downtown and the TOD to happen. And codes really are your implementing tools that we have in place in order to realize a vision that is set. Because we have a CRA, we use that CRA plan. If there wasn't a CRA, we would create a different type of visioning document. But because there is a CRA and there is a visioning document that is supposed to be publicly vetted through charrettes and is formally adopted via reference in the comp plan, that is, for most intents and purposes, the visioning plan for the city. So I do believe that that will be starting shortly. So I think your comments were heard.
Right.
The other thing I will say is the city is also currently developing a updated economic development plan, which will touch on some of the non-building stuff that you spoke about, uses and industry and attracting and retaining small businesses. Those will be part of the economic development plan that is currently being done.
Which is good, and I think as part of that, when projects come in, I think it would benefit the city for them to be reviewed for functionality and longevity, because there are a number of projects that have been completed and are in the works that, in my opinion, will not allow a business to succeed. We have evidence of that in some of the buildings that are completed, that businesses are not surviving and they are turning over within a year, within less than a year, within a 2-year time, because of visibility, parking. Nobody knows where to park. The orientation, the design of the building does not allow for visibility of businesses, and so a lot of these businesses, they rely on social media or marketing to even let people know that they're there, even though thousands of people a day are driving right in front of their door and they don't even see them because the manner of the signage, the position of the signage, and so on. So I think those need to be looked at in different ways too when they come in. But just to your point very quickly, Amanda, about the CRA and the charrettes, and which board member Remicchio did mention, is that we've had charrettes and the citizens lean towards a lower height restriction on development, and we have the city and commission under those at those times say, you know what, we want to allow what we want to allow. So if the commission and city is in position to represent and ensure the desire of the community or the direction of the community, but disregards that, shame on them. That's it.
You have any comments or questions for the presentation?
My colleagues kind of covered everything that we talked about last time, and yeah.
All right, Vice Chair Butch.
I do. I would like to say thank you to the commission and the staff for having the vision to relook at the height. I can tell you that I live right in the bullseye of a zone. I live on 43 acres between Ocean and Woolbright, right along Federal. There is no closer place that would be affected. And everyone that I come in contact with says to me, why are we going so high? You know, when I first got on this board, I was told compatibility is a big thing. And then over the years, sitting on the board, the compatibility issue went away because it was being driven by higher is better. And I am going to go along with my last 2 board members and say, thank you. I appreciate the comments. And that's all that I have to say. But thank you. I definitely support it. And I thank you to the commission.
Thank you, Vice Chair Butch. Jay, will you give me the opportunity to come back to the board? I need to open it up to the public for comment, then we can come back and do a quick sweep on the board, see if anybody has anything else to add. So at this time, I'd like to give opportunity for members of the public to speak on the agenda item. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bonnie Miskell, 14 Southeast 4th Street, Boca Raton, Florida. And I'm just going to hand something out, if I may. If you can just pass that. And I apologize, the map prints are small, and I'll be using my glasses for sure. I'm here on behalf of a property owner. My client owns the parcel that is on the east side of Federal, between Ocean and Boynton to the north and Northeast 6th to the east. It's a block. It's the entire block. This owner acquired the property approximately a year ago. He did extensive research before he did it. And he was attracted to the parcel essentially because of the level of intensity, density, and the height. He has been working on a plan essentially since he bought the property. And we had submitted, which wasn't accepted for a few reasons, a plan that had a phase 1 and phase 2. Before I get into that though, that property had previously been owned by a longtime property owner who had years ago obtained approval of a different plan that was about half of the site. He had a phase 2 that was left open. It was the portion that was on Ocean. The intent, it was a bubble plan. It included an area for a hotel and an area for a residential condo. At the time, the city was very eager to get a hotel. He too was eager to have a hotel on his site, the former owner. That didn't quite pan out and that hotel, by the way, would have been well over 100 feet in order to fit there because it has to sit on structured parking on a pedestal. In any event, that owner sold the property. My client currently holds that property. He too submitted a phase 1 and a phase 2 plan. The phase 2, it was to wipe out the original approval and to kind of reverse the location of the improvements. He felt that the Ocean frontage was much more important as far as developing that first than the Boynton frontage. And the Boynton frontage was left as a phase 2. His intent was to attract a hotel as well. And he too would be in the same predicament that if he had decided to proceed with that plan, he would not have been able to fit the hotel on the site within the height that is prescribed in this. He believes, and he is experiencing the fact that this change will stymie what he had intended to do on the site. Without a doubt, it will affect him dramatically. But, he is an owner and he'll have to figure it out. However, I'd like to point out a few things to you. If you'll look at your zoning map, and by the way, I'm a land use and zoning attorney. I've been doing this for 30 years plus. I've been working in Boynton for at least 20 of those. I might be the only person in the room, given my age, who happened to participate in the workshops over the years because I had represented the owner prior. So I do remember some of the discussions. And in the last decade, those workshops, the 2016 and 17 changes, I was much more involved in than the earlier ones. But I want to read something and I'll start and then I'll turn over to the zoning map. The one thing your staff, they did very well at giving you some of the history because there's a lot of history as it relates to the downtown. There are lots of pros and cons to changing regulations, both up and down. But the reason for the DTOD at that time was that Boynton was not experiencing any redevelopment of its core. And by the way, the core was not where we're sitting. The core was over by Federal and Ocean. That was the core that was envisioned at the time. And things change. You're here to talk about it. I certainly understand that. But there was no redevelopment. In fact, the biggest buyer and seller of real estate in the downtown happened to be the CRA. And that was not the goal originally, but that is exactly what happened. So there was much deliberation between the owners of the core area and city staff back then. There was a lot more participation than this evening, surprisingly, but maybe not so surprisingly. And the DTOD was created and it was crafted in a way to spur redevelopment. So what's happened since then? Well, we've had a number of applications that have come in, Casa Costa being one of the older ones. I did Marina Village, and by the way, it's, I think, somewhere between 2003 and 2006. The years all blend together, but that's when they came in. And there's Broadstone Alliance, which was a recent one just south of Ocean. You have 500 Ocean, which has come in. You have the affordable housing developer that's doing that bid on the CRA property to the west between the tracks and Federal. So a lot of things have happened, and there aren't really that many spaces left to be developed downtown, perhaps redeveloped, but not developed. So if you'll turn to the zoning map and you see the big green circle, which is the DTOD, and you will see almost an aubergine color. It's a dark brownish kind of purplish color. That's the mixed use core. Those parcels are the one that would be affected by the change. City Hall is not in that grouping. It's more of a lighter purple. But of the dark purple, aubergine, brownish parcels, all of them are either developed or entitled. They have rights to build under the plan that they came in with. Even a portion of my client's property right now is entitled, but it's not even half of, it's about half of the site. My client is this little piece right here between Ocean and Boynton. They have Casa Costa to the north. I know it's really hard to see it from here. We have Casa Costa to the north. We have Marina Village to our east, and not very far away, we have Broadstone to the south. Catty cornered across the street is 500 Ocean. When you talk about compatibility, that's what my client is surrounded by, more intense, higher development. And he had hoped to at least be able to be equal to his neighbors. So he is the only vacant site that isn't fully entitled. And so he had hoped to do that. And in fact, we had submitted a plan that partially got us there, and we're now reworking it to try to meet some of the requirements of this new code section. But I wanted to share that with you. Of all the mixed use districts, really only two of them are being affected, MU4 and MUC. And of MUC, essentially your changes tonight are going to impact my client, and really exclusively my client. So we are the victim, or perhaps the beneficiary, as you may see it, of this change, but we don't view it as a favorable one because we will be singled out from those of us that are equally zoned as far as the MUC. While the MU4 looks at a 20% decrease in height, which isn't dramatic, the MUC, you're talking about a 43% increase in the height that my client was expecting that he'd have the right to at least attempt to develop or design to, which if this is approved, he won't be able to because we would be considered new development. We are coming in with a new development plan. So I just wanted to share that with you from this landowner, and this landowner happens to develop land as well, but they're a property owner. They're paying taxes, the site is vacant, they would like to make a reasonable use of it. And being the only one that really will be targeted by this because everybody else is fully entitled, and with the exception of maybe one, they're built today or one's under construction, he is not. So it would absolutely affect him, and it would stymie his opportunities. I'm not going to suggest kill them necessarily, but it does make it more difficult. And I think there's one other thing that I wanted to point out. With the changes you're making, please make them equitably. You're not affecting M1, M2, and M3, but my client has a minimum unit requirement of 60 to the acre. They only have 30. So, but we have essentially the same height to fit it in. So when you're thinking about this, think of a box, and your changes in height, your proposed changes, may seem, and let me get the first page in front of me. There's very little difference between MU3 that has a minimum of 30 units to the acre and MUC, which is required to do 60. We have a minimum of twice what they have, and we have to fit it in a box that's only 10 feet higher. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a practical transition from one height to another. So please think about that. This ordinance wasn't drafted in a way that looks at other things. There's also minimum first floor requirements, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 13 or 15 for the first floor, the commercial floor? 15? Yeah, 15. So you're not giving them 85, you're giving them much less than that. So again, think about those things. And then finally, you're granting someone FAR rights, but you're really not granting them the FAR if they don't have the box to fit it in. So essentially they're losing FAR by this restriction. Again, does it make sense to take 43% of someone's rights away from them? That's exactly what will happen to this property. So that's all I really have to say, but I think you have to consider it in total, in whole, and not just one piece of it. And this approach is a piecemeal approach. It's one piece. It's not a holistic approach. And it affects really one property owner because the others are entitled or built or in the process of being built, which a couple of them are. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Hold on. We'll wrap up the public and then we'll come back. Susan, go ahead, state your name and address for the record, please.
We don't have to do addresses anymore, I found out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Mr.
heard that
Attorney?
happened a few months ago. Susan Oyer, Boynton Beach, Florida. You know where to find me. I was just paying my
Nice.
utility bills today.
Nice.
Aaron knows where to find me. Adam knows where to find me. Andrew knows where to find me. So does Thomas Turkin, our commissioner. So I want to say, first of all, the one thing that people keep forgetting to share with you, whether it's Amanda or anybody else, and I know a lot of you are longtime residents and you're well aware of this. The residents of this city voted for a 4-story maximum. That was approximately 1989, I believe. The voters have spoken. Our previous commissions have broken their promise to the people. I'm sure you voted for it too, Chris. It had like 93% approval rate. Yeah, it had like 93% approval rate. You can't say, oh, it was 51% or anything. 93% of the residents of this city said no to anything over 4 stories. And that was after Coastal Towers went in and everybody had a fit. And I love our city employees. They're fabulous, but they purposely neglect to tell you that every single time. Our residents have spoken, end of story. All of this should not even be up for discussion. It's the ordinance number 1, I think it's 90-0001. The residents voted for this. That should just end this entire discussion. But knowing that it won't, I'll also stand up on my usual bandwagon, which I know you all have heard this before. And I feel quite sorry for Bonnie because, her guy who took over the Bank of America project, AKA Camel Air project, has really, stepped into quite a mine of problems here. But maybe they should look at putting the park in that we were promised. We were told when that project came forward that we would get a park for our residents out of it. They've never built the park. We were promised that park whether the project got built or not. Camel Air never did it, and Camel Air let the ball drop. So, I have little compassion, but I do think we desperately need the hotel. And even I'm willing to forego some height if we get a hotel. I don't think we need any more apartments, none at all. So I think you all should look at maybe just, making that hotel only, which is what we need, with maybe some business there. And of course, as member Chris Simon said, something where proper signage, unlike Casa Costa, where those poor businesses get no signage at all and they're desperate. I will say at this point, I do agree wholeheartedly with what Board Member Remicchio and Board Member Simon have said and brought forward both last meeting and this meeting. We are right. You are very right. The more I think about it, the more I agree. We absolutely do not need a TOD. I do not like the fact that basically we were misled. We were on the verge of being lied to. The truth was obscured by people on the planning department who told us and made it sound like we absolutely had to have a TOD and we had to have a train station. That is on the verge of blatant lying to the residents of this city. We do not need it. Thank you. Mr. Remicchio, for bringing that point forward. I don't know anyone who wants this. And we desperately don't need, 18,000 more beds, plus what is it, 4,000 more businesses, jobs? We don't need this. And this is wrong. We need to be looking at this as a downtown. We need to be making this a destination place. If Lake Worth Beach and Delray Beach don't have a TOD, then why the heck should we? And to be told that we had to have it this certain level, and then it came out at the last meeting, for all of you who were not at the last meeting, that lasted, what was it, 3-4 hours? Turns out there's different levels of train stations too. And that was one of the higher level ones that we had been told all along, this is the only one there and this is the one we have to have. Turns out it's not. Again, whether it's obscuring the facts, misleading the public, or just blatant lying, this is wrong. And I know I'm speaking to like minds up here, but it needs to go on the public record too. So we need to be working on a downtown destination. We do not need a TOD. We absolutely need to be focusing on owner occupied housing. Every apartment, everything that comes forward, you all should be saying no to every apartment. You should be saying condos only, townhomes only, owner occupied. No more letting some company like my next door neighbor's house, it's from some company in Texas that owns hundreds of houses and rents them out for insane fees. And people can't afford to buy a house. Everybody in this city complains about affordability and affordable housing and workforce housing, yet you're not putting any property on the market because you're making everything apartment and you're not making any condos. Guess what? Every other city gets condos and they get loans for their developers to make condos. They can do it here too. They're lying to you. And it starts here with you guys saying, no, this is not going to happen. You all are allowed to make suggestions going forward, then say that. This needs to be owner occupied housing only and no more owning 5 condos or 5 apartments or whatever you want to call them that day. You can only own what you live in. And that will allow the people to get on the property ladder, and that will solve a large portion of our affordable housing and workforce housing problem. And if you want to put on a sale percentage that they can't exceed, you didn't start the timer, so you're stuck with me, Trevor. Because you didn't do it for Bonnie either. So you're stuck. And
all that time getting it ready.
And Ernest isn't here either, so you're safe. So, you're sitting here going, you can solve these problems, make them happen. Board member Simon speaks to scale every time. He's right. We look, the tall buildings that we have downtown should be looked at the eyesores that as soon as they're functionally obsolescent, we knock them down and build something that's more height compatible and appropriate for our city. Not to mention the lack of green space. Again, where's our park that Camelier promised us that was actually part of the agreement for him to even get this permit initially. Let's see, we need to work with our developers to make sure what's coming forward, whether it's Bonnie's project or the one that's going in on Ocean and Federal, my family's old buildings. If we need to be working with these developers, we should not be screwing them over and throwing them to the wind. Bonnie's right. It looks like spot zoning that impacts just one person, but we need to work with them to find a way to make sure that no one's losing in this, but that the residents of the city are gaining. And we need to look at height and density. And I know I'm speaking to the chorus here. None of us want height. None of us want density. It brings no good to our downtown. It doesn't make it walkable, doesn't make it livable, doesn't make it so that we can actually flush the toilets. We all know how bad the water and sewer is downtown. We need no more homes down here. We need businesses. I'm fine. If you want to build a taller building and make it office spaces, let me go on the record now. I'm fine with the 85 feet if you're putting office spaces in. But if you're not bringing jobs in, then it better be a whole heck of a lot lower. It better be 45 feet. And don't tell me it can't work, because it works in Delray, and we always want to look to them as our example. So you know what, let's bring jobs in, or let's keep it at 45 feet. And I think we also need to think about the whole environmental impact. I mean, we don't live in isolation here. What we do impacts the rest of our city, the rest of our county, the rest of our state. We absolutely cannot have any more urban heat islands. We cannot have more concrete canyons. And we need to also look at all the evidence, because I know I brought evidence in the past. They found that the pounding of the foundation to create these big tall buildings on a limestone base, which is what South Florida sits on, causes sinkholes. And you go start taking a look. The evidence is out there because I've found it and turned it into the commission before. So that's something we need to think about. The embarrassment that's happening where, was it 1 block south of Ocean on the east side of Federal, where you have an 8-story building and going across the street from a single family 1-story house and 2-story apartments. Where's the compatibility in that? And that was our last commission who thought that that was acceptable to screw over the residents of this city. And these little pockets of R4 that they're putting around our city so that, you know, oh, somebody's going to come in and buy 4 houses, knock those 4 houses down and put a 4-story building in the middle of a single family neighborhood with 1-story homes. This is your chance to do the right thing and make sure the right thing is happening. So I think that's all I need to say. But I will once again remind you, the voters voted 4-story height maximum. And some of you on the board were living here at that point in time, as was I. We all voted for it. So keep that in mind. And our city commission should remember that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate your time. Susan, can I ask you a question? What year did your family locate to Palm Beach in this area?
The 1871, I think it was, we were the first permanent settlers in Southeast Florida. My great grandmother was the one the historical markers for in Delray Beach on Atlantic Avenue.
Cool.
She's the first girl born in Southeast Florida.
Nice. All right. Sorry, that was completely unrelated to the thing, just a tidbit of knowledge I liked. Thank you.
They're upstairs in the library, all about it.
Thank you. Please state your name, and that's it, apparently.
Hey, Christine DeHassett. I am the Executive Director of the Florida Coalition for Preservation, and I also sat on the board of the Boynton Coalition for Responsible Development. We represent not only residents on the barrier island, but also up and down the coast, anywhere from Boca all the way down through South Palm. We have a large constituency in Boynton, mainly made up of the big group, Boynton Intercoastal Group and Inca. So we keep our fingerprints and our pulse on what affects us, not only environmentally, but also from a growth management point of view, because we're all interconnected, and what one township does, it has a ripple effect on everybody else. So that's just kind of a little way of background. First and foremost, I want to applaud you and thank you for your vision and actually taking the time to vet this as carefully as you have. I've been to all the workshops, and I actually was with you, Bonnie, and all the old workshops too. And I wholeheartedly agree that this is a really great opportunity to try to start this visioning process of a new identity. And moving forward with that identity, I think that the end goal really is sustainability. You love your town, your neighbors love your town. We all have a different identity, but we all want to see each other succeed. And you build it, they will come is a very old, outdated motto, and it doesn't work towards sustainability, I don't think, not only for your town, but for your surrounding neighbors. Some of the aspects when you talk about height, there's other things to think about. There's traffic. There's reduced parking requirements because you have this false planning assumption of a TOD. You have the traffic at these 4 corners, which could potentially start to affect your EMT response times, because you've got Station 4 at the base of Woolbright and you've got Station 1 at the base of Ocean Avenue. Those not only service your town, but they also service barrier island towns. And so it's one thing to say, oh God, I'm going to be late to my hair appointment. It's another thing to say, I'm waiting 9 minutes and I've just had a heart attack. So, I mean, these are just these things. If you take the onion and you pull one more layer off, you start to see that it has further considerations. Flooding at the base of the bridges has been horrific. Actually, Ocean Avenue was closed twice in the last 6 months during king tides, which meant you couldn't get into the Barrier Island. It also meant people from the Barrier Island couldn't get off. And it's disconcerting at best. And we're all dealing with it. All of our towns are dealing with this flooding issue and how to be more resilient, how to be more sustainable. I will tell you, adding density and height is moving in the wrong direction from everything that I've heard. And I encourage you to start with height, but don't stop there. Take a look at other things like density. Don't give away the farm. Make these developers have a certain level of LEED requirements for environmental sustainability. Make them give you more open space, more green, more trees, wider sidewalks so you can have that walkability. And stop using the TOD as a false planning assumption. It doesn't work to anybody's favor but the developer. And what you heard tonight is most developers don't even take advantage of what they can do. So I just ask that, tonight you think about your future generation, not only of your city, but of your surrounding neighbors. And this is not a piecemeal approach. You heard it was from another speaker. I don't think it is. I think it's a first step. And I hope your commission heeds your advice with whatever you come up with tonight. And I just appreciate your time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Good evening.
My name is Barbara Hall. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Greenberg Trorick, and I'm here this evening representing the owners of One Boynton. I had written a letter to Mike Cirillo and the planning folks and city manager. I don't know if you have it in. All right. Everyone hold up your letter. No, I'm kidding. So, what strikes me, I understand you have wonderful goals here for revitalizing areas of your town, keeping it walkable, encouraging employment, and I do applaud you for all these things. But I'm sure you understand from the conversations that what you're doing with these height restrictions is only affecting a few properties. One Boynton is MU4. The current height is 100 feet. The owner of this property is looking to redevelop the central area of the project with additional units. They will need the 100 feet to do it because of the structured parking, the need to replace the parking for the commercial uses. So, the node of Woolbright and Federal Highway is an important node. And creating height at nodes is what planners do, especially in the downtown. I agree with you that height and density everywhere is not consistent with sustainability practices, but where you put it is consistent with sustainability. Putting height in this location to accommodate the allowable density would not affect your city. The project out there is a lovely project. The redevelopment of the central core would be consistent with that. It would not harm the city. It would not deprive you of all of the visions you've thought of and talked about here. I'm sure you could carry out all of those. It sounds like you would probably just affect Bonnie's property, my client's property, and create perhaps the inability for other redevelopment at that particular node. It doesn't prevent you from doing all the good things you want to do. But what it does do is take value from my client's property. Clearly, losing 20 feet, for the city to alter their property entitlements by 20 feet is really significant to this property. They have the density. I know it's been said that height isn't the only factor, but the other factors, they have more than sufficient entitlement in terms of the FAR and units. In fact, although we know they could never achieve it, they could build 391 additional units. 100 feet would not accommodate that. But losing that 20 feet would clearly devalue the property and force the client, you know, someone said land use lawyers like to make love, not war. And I never like to say, you know, we're gonna sue you, but somehow they'd have to retrieve that value. And for what reason would we be at war for 20 feet on a couple of parcels? I don't think it accomplishes what you want, but it certainly kills a project that would provide housing in a part of the city where housing should be, you know? So I hope you'll reconsider. What you're doing is small in terms of the parcels you affect, but significant in terms of the property owners who have that value in their property. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else from the public care to comment? Former Chair Katz, I see you hiding back there. All right, I apologize for not opening it up to the public first. I'm gonna go back around the board. Jay had his hand up long time ago, so go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I have a question for you as chairman. One is just the rules of order that we govern this committee by. I had thought early on that we allowed public comment for 3 minutes.
At our discretion at the start of the meeting.
And our discretion being your discretion. Because there's several people here, I may have a phone here, so I've been clocking time. And some of them have gone on and on and on.
Have an issue with being more informed, to make a more informed decision?
Well, I don't know, because I have a question that maybe somebody here can answer. We hear data, and data is a very wonderful thing, that 1,000 people are moving to Florida per day. Can anyone here tell me, is Boynton Beach benefiting? You talked about, and I agree with you, I would like to see it be a destination. I'd like to have a place to go in Boynton Beach. And when I want to go out to dinner, I do go out to dinner here, but I'd like more choices. I'd like to see that happen. But I'm wondering, how do you get that to happen if you can't attract people? Is it only going to be, are we going to be a little bubble and we're going to support all our restaurants and stores by only the residents of Boynton Beach? And if you believe that, then more power to you. I don't. So the question I have for you is, have we seen an uptick in the residents in Boynton Beach? Does anybody know that?
City, Amanda?
Okay, and now I don't mean the county of Boynton Beach, because there are a lot of developments out further west, which are very affluent. But I mean the city of Boynton Beach. And secondly, what has happened over the last 5 years to the average income level of residents of Boynton Beach? Are we on an uptick, which would be great? I don't know that. And, you know, development's a two-edged sword. I mean, I chaired a zoning commission up north, which was a legal entity. And there was a lot of money running it. We wouldn't give them free sway. We really wanted to make sure we were operating in the community's interest, not the interest of any one board member who might live in an area that'd be impacted on it. That's not what we're about. So my question is, I don't have the data to make that kind of judgment. What will it take to have restaurants in the downtown area that will attract people, that'll attract people from Boca and other towns and Delray, rather than people from Boynton Beach going down to Delray when they want to go off restaurants? And I will say this, you read the newspaper, which I do every day, and the Sun Sentinel, which is one of the many papers I get, on the weekend prints an article that says restaurant openings and closings. And I always look to see what's happening in Boynton Beach, and I'm always disappointed that every town around here has new restaurants opening, but we don't. What are we doing wrong? I don't know the answer to that, but I think we ought to be considering it as we go forward with what we're considering good and bad development. I don't need high rises. I live in a low rise. But I would like to hear somebody talk to these issues. What's it going to take to make ours a I think you used the term a destination. I'd like to see it.
Can I just say one thing to respond to that, to just succinctly? Two things: convenient parking, destinations that, like restaurants that will attract people from outside the area to come here, and zoning, the proper zoning. So if we changed, for example, the zoning on Ocean Avenue to allow for wider sidewalks and outdoor street cafes, that type of zoning will bring in restaurants that will allow for a different al fresco type dining on the street that currently we don't allow. And therefore, with the proper parking, the right marketing and destination, it begins there. A vision. With a vision, we then can put those components together, and the development community will come and help us realize that vision. But if it's a confusing vision, then, well, that was a mouthful.
Cool.
That was confusing.
We can call it that.
Thank you.
All right, Jay.
Gordon.
I'm done, that's all.
Amanda, I wanted to give you a chance to respond. I saw you.
Thank you. Sometimes being virtual, I can't tell if you hear me. I would like to respond with some of the facts that Board Member Sokol is requesting. Is Boynton Beach growing in terms of population? The answer is yes. In 2010, the city's population was about 66,000 people. It is currently 80,380 people. That is approximately a 17% change in those 10 years. So we are growing. For comparison, that percent change in some of the neighboring communities, Palm Beach County's growth in that same time frame was about 13%. So we were growing in terms of population, slightly more. It's important to note that a lot of the units on the west side of town along Congress were developed in this time frame. So the uptick is really concentrated along Congress Avenue, Renaissance Commons, the Lofts, all of those communities that were built within the last 10 years. Some of the other rates of growth, Delray Beach is growing at 10%, West Palm Beach is growing at 17.5%. So we are growing in terms of population. Some other things that may be interesting in terms of facts, total housing units. In 2010, the city had approximately 36,000 housing units. In 2020, we were at 39,700. So there is some growth there as well. In terms of vacancy, our vacancy rates have gone down. So in 2010, there's been about 7,000 vacant units. In 20, there are about 5,000 vacant units. It's a negative 21% change. The median household income currently is $61,000 approximately. I think it is generally going up in trend with the county, but of all the cities in the county, our general median income, I believe, is on the lower on the list of some of the other median incomes. I don't have that data handy, but hopefully that was some of the information. So yes, there's growth. It is at a higher rate. However, a lot of the growth that we've seen in the past 10 years is attributed to the development on the west side of town, not the development in the downtown.
Thank you, Amanda. You good?
Thank you. You've answered the questions that were bothering me.
All right, Mr.
My
Katz.
pleasure.
Cortland, you want to go first? All right, Mr. Attorney, I'm going to open it back up, please, for the former chair who's got.
At your discretion, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. Chris, good to see you. Butch. I'm going to try to get David Katz, 67 Midwood Lane. To try to answer one of your questions, at a quasi judicial meeting, which is what this is, I usually don't limit it to 3 minutes. Now, if there were 50 or 75 people out there, the chair might say, listen, instead of everybody saying the same thing, can you kind of limit it to 2 minutes or just have 2 or 3 people come up here? When I was on this board, I don't know if Butch was on the board then, but Trevor was. We as a board voted against the height limit for the node at 1 Boynton. We voted, I think might have even been a unanimous vote. I think maybe Malcolm Gropper might have voted for it, seeing his background. And of course, the commission approved it. And that's one of the problems of a board like this, is when you're looking out for the residents and the commission doesn't get it because they're influenced by other factors, whatever they may be. So I think that the other thing you need to worry about, and it's not really this board needs to worry about, the commission needs to worry about it, is what Ms. Hall said. If they've been zoned for 100 feet and the commission attempts to downzone it to 80 or 75 or whatever, that will be considered a taking. And the courts don't like that. They will side on the developer side, and they will take money from the city for the court costs and everything like that. So one of the other things I've always pointed out about height limits is that usually, and it happened on Federal Highway with a building where they were allowed to go an extra 9 or 10 feet to hide the air conditioning units and the elevator shafts. And what this board needs to do and the commission needs to do is say, okay, your height limit's 45. If you want to hide that, or bake it into the ordinance that you need to hide the elevator workings or the air conditioning units within the 45 feet. And don't continue to give these exceptions, which are not necessary for the additional height. So I hope that helps you guys out. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Cortland, you had some questions, comments?
Yeah, I just want to sort of say a few things. Speaking of that federal highway project, Mr. Katz, I think they also got a rooftop terrace in with that deal as well, which seemed curious. But in any case, so, I mean, I guess our objective here is, I think we all are in agreement that we want to lower the height. We've been hearing that from people in the community. I think it's pretty, what I gather from everybody here, we're pretty unanimous in that direction. And we're definitely going to get dissension from landowners no matter what we do. And this is just something that is going to be part of it. So I think if a few people come here and speak against it, it shouldn't deter us from what the community is telling us. So that said, I just wanted to make a couple comments on these 2 parcels that were mentioned here today by legal. One, I believe, is a fully built apartment building with retail in the bottom, kind of an awkward building really, with structured parking with nothing over it. I'm a little unclear as to what the real intent and also when this intent was submitted to the architect in terms of tearing down the existing structured parking, because it's very close to 2- and 3-story townhomes and retail. When I say very close, I mean 20 feet. It's very close, maybe 40. So I'd be interested how that would happen. Has that structured parking already have included in it the ability to build on top of it? I don't think that would be the case. That would be a really long vision for a developer of really quite a years ago. So I mean, I really don't really see that as a, I don't know. I don't think it's a problem personally. As far as the other parcel, I want to make sure I understand it from the council that was here. That was the one that is a vacant parcel. I think the art commission, we have an art footing there on the corner of Ocean and Federal, and that would be the northeast corner. So that one I think holds a little more water with me personally. I don't know where your feeling is. Others, I just wanted to express my opinion on that. You know, because I don't really know what the vision or what's been mentioned, but I did ask specifically of staff in this meeting what has been on deck, and I don't believe that was one of them mentioned. So I mean, where was the paperwork? Where was the vision? Why has it just been dormant? So once again, I really don't, fear it, but I would be open to an addendum to allow for hotel use only with retail. And I just wanted to express my opinions on that, but I think we need to move forward. I think what we're all unanimous, we need to move and kind of get this moving. That's my opinion. Thank you.
All right, I like the idea of getting this moving, so may I entertain the motion from someone on this?
I'll move that we approve the proposed amendment as submitted from staff with the recommendation that in the core area that the maximum height be 48 feet
All right,
instead of 80 feet.
one will need to second that. Please.
Can you just restate that with the recommendation?
To be 48 feet in the core area.
I would second that.
Thank you. So we-
Board, sorry,
Yes.
just to clarify, the first part of the motion, I believe, said that as submitted, and the second part said with the central part being 48. So are you recommending it as submitted, or are you recommending a change to the ordinance in front of you?
You want to clarify, Tom?
Yeah, I was looking at the footnote, so I apologize. I'm fine with the footnote as submitted from staff with the only change to the amendment, instead of going from 100 to 80 and 150 to 85, that go to 48 feet
All right,
in both areas.
Mixed-use core goes to from 150 to 48 feet, and MU4, is the recommendation the same?
It is.
Okay,
And I
so
realize
from 100 feet to 48 feet. Okay, I just wanted to clear for the record.
you'll have a chance to vote. Fine. All right. Does your second still stand, Chris? You're still good with that? We got to get it on the board, on the floor to vote for. All right. Thank you. All right. So we have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are you having a discussion on the motion?
Would you like to open up for discussion? Sure. Let's go.
You just proposed reducing 100 and 150 feet to 48 feet, and yet the other areas are 75, 65, and 55.
Wonderful.
The logic
Excuse me.
escapes me.
Excuse me,
We just come
Gentlemen,
from a
sorry.
gentleman speaking
Uh-oh.
here.
Hold on.
I know this is out of order for you guys. Is there any way we make sure the microphone is on and to speak into it? Because
Oh, I'm
Is everyone hearing your voice?
Thank you.
He had me turn it off before.
Didn't know where the
So I
voice was
turned it
coming
off.
from.
No, again, the logic escapes me. MU4 and MU core going from very high numbers to 48 feet, and we have 75, 65, and 55 in the other three areas. I mean, it's not consistent. I'm bothered by the rush to judgment, and you're trying to change the whole tenor of this whole thing. And the other part that bothers me is we heard a gentleman talk about spot zoning. And I know from my own experience in a legal entity, spot zoning is a dangerous concept. I would prefer to push this back to our professionals to make an assessment. Are we now coming up with something that amounts to spot zoning and taking from a developer who bought it under a certain set of circumstances, and we're now reducing this to your client from, forget for going from 150 to 85 feet, we're talking about going from 150 feet to 40, 43 or 48 feet. What are we doing to them? Why would anybody want to be coming into our town?
Hey, excuse me, but nothing has ever been built to 150 feet since 2002, which is 20 years.
I'm not arguing 150 feet,
The
but going
tallest
from,
building is 80 feet, as staff has pointed out approximately, that has been built to date, the tallest building. Just because I'm recommending almost half of a reduction has no correlation to where this pie in the sky 150 feet came from.
I understand that.
Work with the basis of, you asked me why that rationale. It comes from, I will just point out that I served for 10 years as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Board in a local city and was an elected official for 6 years. I also have experience in planning. I have a different vision for the city. So everybody gets to have an opportunity to have a say of where the city should go. I'm going to speak for my few minutes, but you asked me to explain what, you want me to go down the road of
No,
rationale?
I'm asking you to explain one more thing to me. Why would you reduce those two to 48 and leave the other
citywide for me.
75, 65, and 55?
If there was a referendum in 1989, a referendum from the voters that reduced the height, I'll have to look and see if the referendum was specifically to reduce the height in the city charter, then we have a real problem. Because if the charter was amended by the voters in 89 and nothing was done to codify it in the land use regulations and in the city ordinance, I doubt that there'd be that huge of an oversight. But by understanding what just happened with Town Square, I think it's very possible some of these things could possibly have been overlooked.
Yeah, but I'm just asking you the simple question of why would you reduce MU4 and core?
He explained that earlier.
Citywide, I think I have no problem. It's not
Sure.
spot.
You're going to suggest it, then do that. Be consistent.
Well, this is what's, I'm going by what's before us. It's a
Hey,
recommendation.
give Cortland a chance to.
Hey, listen, that's just out of control, quite honestly. That's what I'm going to say. That's over 50% reduction. That's just creating chaos. This is like a slap in the face to the community. We want a vibrant downtown. Let's be clear. We want retail. We want, many people, less high density transient rental apartments, that in their pro forma, they say this is what's going to only I can afford to build. We all know what we want. This is not only a step in the right direction, it's a huge step. Okay. 150 to 85, 100 to 80. I think this is showing the community that, yeah, we're not Del Rey, right? Okay, we want to be a little bigger and a little better. We don't want to be that big. We don't want to be West Palm. We definitely don't want to be Fort Lauderdale or Boca. I think this is the right mix. I think the way that that Amanda and her staff has wrote this approved modification that was suggested by this board is good to go as is. And I do not advise, I don't think we should really throw gas in the fire. I think this is a nice big move, but I think it's about as big as I'm comfortable as making.
Okay.
May I make a comment, please?
Well, sure.
Just a quick comment. I will say, staff is comfortable with the amendment as presented. A more drastic cut in height, it would be my opinion that staff would need to look a little bit more holistically as the development entitlements as a whole, meaning it would be difficult to say that mixed use core would have a height of 43, but a density of 80. And then you have MU1 that has a higher height, which is 45 or 55 feet, and only allows 20 units an acre. So, the way these zoning districts and most municipalities are developed is they're cumulative. What's allowed in MU1 is allowed in MU2, is allowed in MU3. So they are meant to be, layered on top of it. So this would, an amendment like that would just change the dynamics of how the zoning districts are working together. And I would just appreciate some time to review if this is the direction the board would like to go. I do think it would require another look from staff at amendments as a whole and how we could achieve something like that. If that is the direction, I would kindly request that this is tabled so we can bring forward a more holistic amendment to the board if that's what the board chooses.
Chair, I have one comment and one question as a response to Amanda.
Right, go ahead.
And it's also a response to one of the public comments is I have stated in previous meetings that the height does directly correlate to density. And I think that the reduction, if we go even greater or even within the reduction that we're being considered currently, that density should be included within the verbiage of the potentially condition of approval, that it needs to be reviewed and potentially reduced, relatively speaking with that.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say in the beginning, when we started my conversation, I said that I would support you
Yeah.
all go into the 80 and the 85
We heard-
foot.
we heard you.
But I pointed out, I wanted to make my argument
Sure.
for the 48 feet.
So-
Thank you.
Right. So the question portion is, if we move to, if we second the motion to vote on the reduction to 48 feet, right?
It's been seconded
Right.
by
So,
you,
but if we,
which puts it on the table.
puts
for
it on the
vote.
table for vote, okay? So does that,
Somebody has to do it if he's.
does that negate the opportunity now to vote to approve it as presented by the town, thereby leaving us without a say at that we would be okay with it being at 85? How does that work?
No, you may entertain another motion as presented.
Mhm. Okay.
The vote on this
And,
one
and,
now?
and the other reason.
Well, if it's on the table, so
Yeah.
So
unless he
either we vote or we
either
force
revokes
it.
it.
There's a motion on the table in a second.
Oh.
I will, to make things simpler, I will withdraw my motion if the seconder will agree. There's no support for
Right,
this.
right.
And
if
that we
go
move
that
on
route.
with the recommendation for,
There
so
we
that
go.
we can, so we can move on this.
Right, and the only reason that I want to clarify that and potentially pull that is because we have this, we're somewhat in agreement on everything as is. We don't want to lose the opportunity to approve something that we might approve otherwise by introducing that other condition, leaving us ineffective in the decision.
All right, we're good. It's been withdrawn. Correct? Withdrawn?
Well, I made the motion.
I
and the
withdraw the
seconder
second.
agrees, so
Yes.
if you can now, that's it, yeah.
Okay, so back to the
Back to the
original
the main
request
motion.
for motion.
I will move the approval of the amendment as presented by staff.
Second.
There you go, guys. All right. All those in favor?
I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Yes, please. Can I get a roll call vote?
Sure, just would like to get clarification that Mr. Rosecrans withdraws his original
Oh,
motion.
no. It was
Remicchio.
Remicchio.
Remicchio, I apologize. Remicchio withdraws his original motion. Did that need a second? Mr. Schwartz?
From the
Yeah, the seconder needed to agree. to that,
I agreed
yes.
to withdraw the second.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we're clean right now. All right, we'll go ahead for the roll call, please. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Harper,
Aye.
Mr. Bioni,
Aye.
Mr. Simon,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Here.
here.
Oh, yes or no?
Oh,
or no?
sorry. Yes, excuse me.
Don't trick me. Mr. Sobel,
Yes.
Mr. Remicchio,
Yes.
Chair Rosecrans,
Yes.
7-0 yeses.
All right, thank you very much. That item's gone.
Not on that.
Want to make comments, we can do it at the end. All right, we'll move on here to item 7B. Approve modifications, amending Part 3 Land Development Regulations, Chapter 1, Article 2. Exterior building site standards to include requirements for commercial frontage. We're good. If you want to give everybody a chance to leave, that's fine.
I think I'll go ahead and get started if that's
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Meyer. I'm a senior planner with the Planning and Zoning Division. And tonight I will be presenting proposed code amendments regarding commercial frontage minimums. Before we go into the proposed amendments, however, I would like to outline the current conditions of our code and what it requires. Currently, mixed-use zoning districts and overlays require a mixture of active and commercial uses along key corridors. The code requires these active and commercial uses to be located on the ground floor of buildings that front an arterial roadway.
However, the code does not provide a specific percentage of required commercial frontage and minimum design standards. As such, the code allows applicants to satisfy the existing active/commercial use requirement by establishing resident-oriented service type uses such as lounges, gyms, common rooms, and recreational spaces in lieu of commercial public-facing uses. The lack of clear commercial frontage standards limits staff's ability to require an adequate percentage of viable commercial space along key corridors. It also creates the possibility of commercial spaces that lack sufficient depth and/or width, resulting in vacant storefronts. Manny, if you could advance 2 slides, please. So our proposed amendments, first I want to just go in and before we go into the actual proposed amendments, we wanted to make sure that our amendments clearly defined exactly what commercial uses and what active uses are. The proposed amendments define commercial uses as uses serving the general public such as retail, restaurants, bars, entertainment, personal services, and offices, and define active uses as resident-only serving amenities such as lounges, gyms, common rooms, and recreational spaces. This also includes entrances to individual dwelling units that incorporate features such as porches, stoops, landings, or foundation plantings within the adjacent pedestrian zone active area. Next slide. So next, staff proposes amendments which require a certain percentage of commercial frontage along key rights of way within the city's overlay districts and properties west of I-95 zoned suburban mixed use. The amount of required commercial frontage depends on the overlay or zoning district in which a project is located and the right of way which it abuts. For projects east of I-95, the commercial frontage is largely dictated by whether a project is located within an overlay district. For projects west of I-95, the overlay requirement is dictated by whether a project is zoned suburban mixed use. The commercial frontage requirement is designed to complement the pedestrian zone requirements already established within the city's code for properties within the overlays. Manny, next slide. Staff has developed a map to help more clearly illustrate the location of commercial frontage requirements and their associated percentage. It is important to note that for the properties west of 95, the commercial frontage requirement is only required of properties zoned suburban mixed use, which is currently limited to the developed areas along Congress Avenue between Old Boynton Road and Gateway Boulevard, and the parcel located generally southwest of the intersection of Boynton Beach Boulevard and Knuth Road. Next slide, please. Staff has also developed a diagram in the slide to help visualize the commercial frontage requirements. The first diagram shows the 50% commercial frontage requirement with the remainder of the frontage to be at the discretion of the property owner. The second diagram shows the 70% commercial frontage requirement, and any frontage not set aside for commercial frontage must be designed to support active uses. Also note that commercial frontages will also have a minimum depth of 40 feet and a minimum height of 13 feet. And this is based upon industry and market standards. Next slide, Manny. This concludes my presentation. Staff is here and available to help answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you for that. At this time, I'm going to open it up to the public first. Would anybody care to come and speak on this?
If you want to limit it to 3 minutes, I would do that at the start.
Yeah, it's getting kind of late, and I figured out how to use this thing.
Here, the attorney left this for you. Susan Oyer. Okay, I guess I haven't seen all the background on this, so please explain this in layman's terms. Give me examples. Have him give me examples.
At least just stare at us.
Thank you. Thank you. My mistake.
Thank you. Can we ask you if you could dumb it down a little bit?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Because that was kind of over my head a little bit. On
it gets a little technical, so I'm happy to kind of clarify it for you. Right now, our code requires generally that any properties within our overlays have commercial and/or active uses fronting the first floor. basically, it doesn't provide any sort of minimums or any sort of standards for that. And so we've seen a lot of designs come in that are just kind of like skirting under the minimum. And this code amendment is to provide us a set of design standards so that we can have more effective commercial use front our thoroughfares to create more active pedestrian spaces along our pedestrian zones.
Okay, so give me an example of what a 50% would look like. Is there one out there in the city that we all know of?
Chair, if I could please suggest that public comments goes all the way through and then we can have staff respond to some of the comments if you choose.
Okay,
done that in the past.
that's fine.
So.
So I want to see examples. I mean, you're talking in the air and I don't understand, and
Okay.
I'm reasonably on top of this stuff. And
I know it's hard to have follow-ups when you're not getting the
No,
answer,
no,
but
no,
if
and
you've got
that's-
other items.
And I
please.
don't have any other questions. I just want to know what the heck is this and explain it so that everybody understands. Because if I don't, then no one else does outside of you guys and the couple developers in the room that are left. So if we could have some examples of places around the city that we all know of, and please give me examples of what 50% looks like or should look like, given it maybe a non-example. This is supposed to be 50%, but yet it looks like this instead. Same with the 70%. And thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Sir, could you please provide us with examples and explain it a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I don't have any specific examples offhand, but what I can do is kind of help visualize what that would kind of look like in more concrete terms.
Please.
When we're speaking to commercial frontage, we are speaking to uses that front the frontage, meaning their entrance, their access is visible and accessible from the street. An example of this would be like Hurricane Alley. It fronts Ocean Avenue. It's accessible from Ocean Avenue. There are active uses within the active zone of the pedestrian zone requirement on Ocean Avenue. So that's kind of like an example of commercial frontage. Other frontage in the essence of the 50% area would be up to the discretion of the property owner. Other frontage could be uses that aren't necessarily active, but they are part of the building and they must front the right of way in some capacity. So this could just be a wall with windows that doesn't really contribute to any sort of active or commercial frontage towards that street. In the map and in the table, you'll see that that's very limited to not our main thoroughfares, but kind of the streets that are kind of, I hate to use the word secondary, but not as focused as our main thoroughfares like Ocean, Federal, those types of thoroughfares. Really, the key is the 70% commercial frontage requirement, which sees that same kind of typical commercially fronted use, like Hurricane Alley or like another retail use that fronts the right-of-way, would be required along 70% of that frontage, and then the remainder of that frontage. And I use remainder strongly because the 70% is a minimum. It's not you have to provide 70, it's a minimum 70%. So if they want to do 100% commercial, that would be within their ability to do so. But if they only provided 70, the remainder would need to be filled up with active frontage requirements. And a good example of that would be uses that are not necessarily public, but they are active in the sense that they serve, let's say it's a mixed use development. They are, they're like a gym or a residential lobby or an entrance to a residential on the second floors or third floors. That would be what an example of what an active frontage is, or if there's townhomes, fronting the entrances to those homes off the street to provide for stoops, to provide for some sort of active area, some interaction between the street and the facade.
Thank you. All right, we're going to close public comment. I don't see anybody left to speak unless I'm mistaken. Good. Vice Chair Butch, you have something?
Andrew, if I may, just to keep it simple for us. Using Hurricane Alley as an example, as it stands right now. Do I interpret that as using 100% of the frontage for commercial purpose?
So
because the fence extends from one length and they sit the whole width of the building. To me, that would be 100%. Is that
if
correct?
Hurricane Alley was its own building on its own lot,
yes,
that would be a 100% frontage.
Okay, and using that as the example, if it was as stated now, if they only used half of it, that would be acceptable now, but you want to make it at least 70% of that.
Not sure I understand. I want to make sure.
There's not a trick in that question. I just want to make sure I understood what 100% of the frontage was compared to the building size.
Of course. So let's say in that particular location along Ocean Avenue, it would be the 70% commercial frontage requirement plus the remainder active. So the minimum development standard for that would be 70% of that building.
Right.
Being the commercial frontage, and then the remainder would have to be some sort of active.
Could be planters or something there.
There is an exception in the code for public plazas and things of that nature, and that would go towards that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Anybody else questions? Cortland, go first.
Be
Then we'll
quick,
come
I'll
back
make
to
it quick.
Chris.
So the objective of this proposed amendment, and I'm speaking loosely to make sure I understand it, is in key critical foot traffic and retail commercial areas of our city, we want to encourage the landowners to have a more engaging first floor business.
That's correct.
Okay, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
I'm just kind of unclear on, we have proposed amendments. So are we voting on both of these 50% and 70%? Is it one over the other? Is it, these are, you have the 50% in one of the districts that you showed and 70 in another? Is that kind of what's happening?
Manny, could you go to the table? That one, thank you. This really outlines kind of and the reason we provide the map is because this can look like information overload, but this kind of breaks it down. Really, these commercial requirements are being applied to our overlays. And so within the code language under each overlay district, there will be the requirement for the commercial frontage at those percentages under those for properties fronting those rights of ways.
Okay. So for example, Southeast 4th Street, which would be right over here, correct?
Right.
And that is in the area just south of 500 Ocean.
Yes, that's the street
between
that
there
runs.
and between there and the tracks. Really,
Yes.
is really all you're looking at, not the entire Southeast 4th Street that runs all the way to Seacrest.
Southeast 4th Street runs north,
and south.
from,
I apologize.
from Ocean south to.
Right, and it's the full length of, because that's the rear of the commercial property.
Almost the full
properties.
length. It ends at the it ends where the downtown TOD district overlay ends, which is just shy of where it kind of really comes close to federal there.
So that's good, and I just want to get clarification on that. And this kind of like hammers my point that this is directly related to the point that I really hammer on every time that that a lot of this comes up is, there's the thought of pushing commercial space and retail space against the road without providing clear destination for where do I park to go into these places. So I can't figure it out, so I'm not going to go. And when everything is built in a line parallel with the sidewalk, whatever height the building is, I'm driving down the street, I don't see every one of those signs. If I'm walking across the street, I might see those signs because I'm traveling at a slower speed. Which I touched on it earlier with the Costa Costa as an example. Nobody knows, nobody in this room can name every business that's in that building on fronting US 1, because you drive right by it, you're paying attention to traffic. If you were looking for a specific store in that building, it's because you looked it up prior to, so you have a general idea of where it is. And then you're going to go about 5 miles an hour as you pass that to figure out which one it is. And then you're going to look around and say, well, I don't even know where to park. How do I even get in this place? So I think that there needs to be a little bit more to this than just what is the frontage? How close and how much frontage is there? I think that this needs a little bit more thought and development, and which ties back into the long conversation that we just had on the previous item, that and the public comments came up that indicate that there is, you know, one piece or a very small piece of the overall picture that we're trying to address within verbiage without looking at the whole picture. Which ties back into why are we only looking at the MU4, MU core and not the other districts? Well, that's because that's what was presented to us. This is what's presented to us, and I don't think it takes everything into account when it comes to commercial frontage. And that's it.
Jay?
One quick point to you. You know, there is a self-correcting factor.
We need the mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got me turning it off. There's a self-correcting factor. If I'm a store owner and I'm looking to put a store along that frontage, you damn well know that I'm going to look at the parking that people can access my store. And if it's not provided, I'm not going in there. So I think you're correct. So, that's right. So I think the developers, in order to sell their commercial property, are going to take this into account. They're not stupid. They want to sell this stuff. So I think we have to trust a little bit that these are businessmen and they're going to make business decisions.
I beg to differ, because the only reason the retail space is provided in these buildings is because it's required. There is no viability or there's no value to the use of, or the renting and the leasing and the maintenance and the upkeep and the replacement and the build outs and every piece that goes into a business in those spaces. We discussed it. Why are there apartments over condominiums? We've touched on all of these topics over a long period of time. And it's because the developer, where is the developer going to make the most money? And if they were not required to put any retail spaces in there, they wouldn't put it in there.
And if I'm buying a condo and I see empty spaces, I'm not going to go rushing in there. So I don't agree with you. I think there's a symbiotic relationship with the person buying the apartment, the developer putting it in retail space in there. And if it's vacant retail space, you're not going to want to buy the apartment there. You're not going to want to live in a derelict.
I don't think I'm buying an apartment because of what business.
It's for you buying the whole image. Okay, well, you know, we choose disagree. I would like, if you're willing to entertain a motion, I think this is a good start.
Let's ask the other members of the board if they have any comments or questions as well.
One short point. I think one of the objectives that staff is trying to bring to our attention is what we have found in, especially in urban redevelopment areas, is that professional office space, real estate offices, things that don't generate the type of node of activity that staff is looking for at the street level. So you have to have, by doing this will require the property owner to put the type of uses that'll generate the type of node of activity on the street that they're looking for. So when professional office comes in, a real estate office, they may recommend that on the second floor. An architect may be on the second floor, not on the street, not at the street level.
And Chris, wouldn't your parking problems be addressed in a later, when we can address the parking and not, and the frontage seems like it could be separate in this motion or this.
It all needs to be kind of considered as a whole when they're developing the verbiage.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else? William? Good. Butch? Vice Chair? Butch? Sorry, I'm going first name, guys. That's because I ruin all your last names every time I try. All right. So I think we're good. Look, can I entertain a motion now, please? Anybody?
I will make a motion to accept what is presented to us by staff regarding frontage, the 50%, 70% frontage requirements as presented in the presentation.
So just to clarify, you're moving to approve item 7B.
Correct.
And I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you very much. That was a good presentation, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was unanimous also, correct?
Yes. All right, next up, item 7C. Well, that's a long paragraph there. Is it okay if I just say next up, item 7C?
Yes.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Good evening, members of the board and chairman. My name is Jae-yoon Kim. I'm afraid my voice is going to be too loud. With the development services, I'm here to present a few tax amendments. Can you go next slide, please, Manny? Okay. I'm going to try to make it quick. All right, so the staff is proposing series of various modifications to the city's land development regulations. The amendments largely are focused on clarifying the intent of the Part 3 land development regulations. So the first one is allow for exploration of abandoned applications by amending Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 2F. The currently city's LDR lacks standards that allow staff to formally close an application that has become dormant. The proposed amendment allows the staff to close application after 6 months of inactivity. Note the abandoned application refers when the application is not active and has not submitted plans or documents. The project remains active when general submittal is made after official application is submitted. So simply, we want to make sure the applicants are staying active and provide some sort of updated documents or revised plans instead of submitted and gone for the 6 months. Because the 6 months we can have another code amendments or changes to the code, which can cause the conflict with the existing applications. So that's we're trying to prevent that happening. So the second one is, Manny, can we stay on the second slide, please? Yes, thank you. So the second one is create a process to request the land development regulations interpretations by amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 7G to establish process for zoning interpretations. So generally, staff has interpreted the LDR by zoning verification letters. However, zoning verification letter is often specific to a property. It may not address the general regulations. So by creating this process, staff believes that it will formally establish a series of department manual to provide consistencies. The proposed process is a valuable internal tool as it permits staff to draft formal interpretations when code provisions conflicts or lack clarity, or permits applicants to request interpretations for assurance in applicability or certain code sections. So this practice actually has been implemented to the different cities that, and sometimes there is a code that is a conflict, or there is use that is just came up that a code is not codified. And then development services, with the development services director's determination, and then the current zoning, planning and zoning director can make the determinations, and it can be codified into the code later on, but until that point, it can make that their decision can be implemented for the future development or future actions. So the third one is allow for exemption to the land development regulations for emergency facilities, essential services by amending Chapter 3, Article 2, Section 11 to create an exemption for city-owned telecommunication towers used for essential services. So this is, we are trying to be a little more proactive for this one. The new PD stations may house emergency facilities for essential services. In order to serve the city, the telecommunication tower is required to exceed heights defined in LDR Part 3, Chapter 3, Article 5, Section 11, wireless communication facilities. The current regulations for such facilities exempts minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, maximum lot coverage, maximum floor area, and building setbacks. It does not state including height exemptions. With this tax amendment, city-owned telecommunication towers used for essential services will allow to construct heights as needed. So for example, this new PD station has a PID zoning on the line zoning district. Per the code, per the LDR, it allows about 100 to 100 feet, 115 feet. However, with this amendment, it can reach as a height as they need it, and that's also common practice to different cities because this the essential services oftentimes it requires really tall towers to provide the services as needed. Number 4 is adjust regulations for industrial uses permitted on Congress Avenue by amending Chapter 3, Article 4, and Section 3, D use metrics, footnotes 23 to revise regulations for industrial uses on arterial and collector roadways. The proposed text amendment clarifies the current intent of requiring commercial uses on the industrial properties on the Congress Avenue. The industrial properties with the building frontage on the Congress Avenue will continue to be required to have commercial uses fronting the road. However, in certain occasions where the buildings are not fronting or visible from Congress Avenue, commercial uses will not be required. So this is one of a particular, this text amendment is brought to the staff attention is one the existing Bethesda Hospital property located 3800 South Congress Avenue. There is a future potential buyers and developers who want to improve this property and as also adding additions to the existing buildings. However, because the current code requires commercial components, even though this particular property is not even near visible from the Congress Avenue. By adopting this, by doing this text amendment, this type of buildings will allow to do more industrial business as intended. So number 5, sustainable parking reductions to include a reduction for the industrial uses by amending Chapter 4, Article 5, Section 3G, parking reductions for sustainability to include a sustainable parking ratio for select industrial. Parking reduction for the sustainability is not offering for industrial development currently. In order to encourage new industrial developments, to increase the previous areas and provide parking spaces for the motorcycle, compact vehicles, and vehicle charging stations, and also being away from the conventional parking lots, the staff believes that these sustainable parking reductions will be necessary for the certain type of industrial use. Additionally, this industrial use these days are very modernizing with the use of technology and are reducing their needs for the surplus parking areas. This proposal allows for industrial properties to take advantage of reduced parking rates if the development satisfies the outlined requirements in LDR and meets the sustainable design and operations. So for example, packing, shipping, trucking, moving, the current code requires 1 per 800, but this type of industrial use is not really labor intense. So by reduction, adopting this tax amendment, it will allow the 1 per 1,000 square foot for that. Another big example is wholesale or distribution centers. Those are also not labor intense industrial use. And this will also, current code requires a 1 per 700. By adopting this, it will allow 1 per 1,000. So the last one is very minor. The staff would like to present amendment to Chapter 3, Article 3, Zoning District, Section 2, Residential District, BR1AA, Single Family Residential District, to revise parameters for permitted administrative adjustment. So the administrative adjustment allows a front yard reduction for the lots platted prior to 2008. The asterisk that limits the lots are eligible between the 1975 and 2008. Staff finds that this is a conflict information and would like to strike through it and keep it the front in yard reduction for the lots platted prior to 2008. So it's just clarifying it, two code sections that were conflicting. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm here for any questions.
I'll turn my mic on, or you say I should. Not many members of the public left. Anyone? No? Susan, what are you doing?
I'm using my First Amendment right.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, and I know I only have 3 minutes. Okay, so I think you should shorten the amount of time to abandon. I believe that was item number 1. I think it needs to be a whole heck of a lot shorter. And especially since way too many developers are taking advantage of the state, disaster relief and dragging this stuff out, AKA the Camelier project that's now Bonnie's newest nightmare. You guys really need to shorten this up. If you aren't ready to put the shovel in the ground, then why the heck are you coming to our city? And I really think it starts here with you guys. And I really think you guys need to shorten this up and tighten this up. And you're either ready to move forward or you're not, or get the heck out and bring in a developer who is. Yay, we can't have enough sustainable parking. There's not enough chargers out there, especially not for me, because I couldn't park at one twice today already out front. The rest of it, I kind of understand the industrial. My big concern is we don't have nearly enough industrial, and I think this adds more industrial for us, and we desperately need that. Industrial equals jobs. And these industrial spaces in our city bring us a lot of money. And we have some really prestige companies that everyone's not aware of. We have a top makeup manufacturing company. You see their makeup in Walgreens and CVS, and it's made here in Boynton and nobody knows about it. I know there's the people who did the lighting for the water tower is one of the top lighting companies in the world, and they're based here in Boynton Beach. And we need more industrial. So anything that builds on that, I'm all for. I think this talked, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding this correctly, about discussing major versus minor when it comes time for site plan modifications. Because like, for example, on Old Boynton Road and Federal, where that gas station used to be, they just went through and knocked everything down. And I'm like, it never came in front of P&D. I didn't see it. And they're like, oh, it was a minor site plan modification. I'm like, you knocked the whole thing down. How is that minor? So maybe that should be something that should be addressed. And this is the perfect venue for you guys to look at that and maybe throw that in as maybe what are we looking at when we just talk major versus minor, and review with you versus what the code is allowing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you for your First Amendment rights. All right. Would you like to address any of those, or Amanda? I know you're on. I see your little thumbnail. Sure.
About the extensions, site plan extensions are under, yes, so there is a Florida statute that says Emergency Act, and then that automatically, upon their applicant's request, it can be extended. And also our LDR, also there is provisions that allows 18 months extensions per their request prior to the site plan explorations, which requires active building permits. So there is but this one is only talks about when they made initial applications, and I don't want to use the words of the disappear, but they're gone. We never heard about it. We don't hear about updates or questions. Then we consider it is inactive, and we like to say this is abandoned applications. So it just never been codified in the code, and that's why we are wanted to codify it and adopt it formally, and we can more actively use on this one. So this is two different issues, but site plan extensions versus abandoned applications are two different things. But thank you for pointing out to us.
Can I ask how you came up with 6 months?
Say again, sir.
How did you come up with the 6 months?
I think that can be more answered to by Amanda, but I think this is a general based on I'm pretty sure it's a research on the other cities are doing it. Amanda, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I can answer that. So first, Jay is correct that this is a completely separate issue than expiring or time continuance on approved site plans. This is specific to projects that submit one set of drawings and then do not follow through with the rest of the approval process. Those are the ones we would like to formally close them and call them abandoned. Because what could happen is if they are never closed, they sit open on one review that was submitted in 2010 and come in today and say, well, I got reviewed once 10 years ago and it's not closed. I'm submitted under, this gets back to what we were previously talking about, I am allowed to use the old zoning code. And this is what this is trying to avoid. You either are continuing through the approval process or we abandon the application and you have to submit again. It doesn't prevent anything, any type of resubmittal. It simply closes that application and forces a new submittal to come in. In terms of the time allotment for 6 months, staff generally turns around site plan reviews in about 2 weeks. So we would start the clock after they get their first initial comments, and the 6 months is purely for time to revise plans. In most cases, we should be getting plans back within a month or two. So I feel 6 months is extremely generous. And again, it wouldn't prevent them if for some reason something happened and they couldn't submit within 6 months and they have full intention of submitting, it wouldn't prevent them from resubmitting a new application. And if they show good faith efforts to be moving through the process, we could keep it open. This is simply to avoid people abusing the current system the way it stands here for lack of regulation in this department.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any other comments before I throw it to the board? No, we're good. All right, Cortland.
Sure. I just have one question on item 5, adjust sustainable parking reductions to include a reduction for industrial use. So I'm a little unclear right now. I know we discussed in the past as a board to increase sustainable recharging stations based on statistics that are national. Can you just break that down into some plain talk for me?
Sure.
This is not that. So what this does is allow different types of uses to be able to take advantage of the sustainable parking reduction. So they would need to meet all of the criteria for sustainable parking the way they stand now. And instead of meeting the current code, which says 1 parking space to 700, they would be able to do 1 space to 1,000. And again, what we get in return for that would be them meeting the sustainable guidelines the way they are outlined in the code right now. Staff is working still on a.
Yes.
Okay. But do they have let's say it's 20 spaces or 10 spaces. Do they have to put electric chargers in any of those spaces currently?
Yes, but those code sections are not changing.
So it's just a reduction in the pervious or impervious spaces?
If they, yes, we allow them to create less parking in return for meeting the requirements of sustainable parking. Again, staff is working on a more all-inclusive amendment to the sustainable development regulations, and we have note of your comments regarding those regulations, but this is not that. This is simply adding uses to be eligible to use this program.
Okay, great. I'm ready to make a motion.
I would encourage us to just make a motion.
So I'm going to
Why
go
are
ahead
you
and
looking
make,
at me when you say that?
I'm going to make a motion to approve 7C as it is written.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Remigio, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. For the record, Jay has he has a ride that picks him up at 9 o'clock, so he had to take off, but I'm sure he'd be super interested in item 7D, which was added.
Thank you guys for allowing me to. Thank you guys for allowing me to add this item. In September 17th, there was a community meeting organized by Pulte Homes, which made a proposal to the city to requesting from the city to donate a parcel of land in between the Meadows and Nautica PUDs. And so there was a community meeting. They made a presentation. Around 350 homeowners showed up from those communities, voicing their concerns. So I attended the meeting and listened attentively to the concerns from the residents. And what I heard was overall was when the Meadows was originally developed, the city required that they donate 5 acres, a tract of to be used for green space / recreation, a park. So what I heard over and over from the residents was their concerns that they were promised a park and they never had a park. So in doing some research, I found a couple conclusions. One is in our comp plan. As you know, we have a comprehensive land use plan that spells out future land use elements. And in the future element of our comp plan is a recreation element. And in the recreation element, there's a policy, and it's policy 1.3.1, which speaks to the compatibility and the consistency with the said policy documents, that the city enforces those. So what I'm referring to is item G, which specifically says that the recreation category shall include active and passive recreation facilities and parks that are both publicly owned and privately owned. And this is the point I want to make to the board. It shall be the policy of the city that all land acquired, keep in mind Meadows donated this land to the city for the specific purpose of a park, that the city's policy is that when land is acquired for public parks, excluding those that are in plan zoning districts, that they shall be placed in the recreational land use zoning category within 5 years. So, which means that this property was deeded to the city in 1995. By the year 2000, the city was required to change it from residential PUD to recreation. To further support what the residents are requesting tonight, which is that we begin the process to ask the city commission to recognize the recreation zoning that was originally approved and agreed by the homeowners and agreed by the city in their own policy. Further, to codify doing research, and I'm going to present 3 exhibits, exhibit A, B, and C. And A is a diagram of the PUD that when it was originally granted to the city, and it's the outline, and on it, it specifically states for the record, so that this is clear, that this is Knollwood's PUD park site. This is the map. The second is exhibit B, is the actual legal description of the 5-acre park site as deeded to this, granted to the city for the exclusive right of a park. And then the third part of that is the indenture, which is the codification of this, is filed in the clerk of the courts so that it becomes a legal binding document. So the point that we want to get to here is a couple. One is, let's begin the process tonight to recommend, and I think the commission, in watching the last couple city commission meetings, they put on future agenda items that this would be brought up, that they were doing legal research. So the legal research has been done, the property, I think it's just a matter of us making a recommendation that they recognize the recreation zoning that was originally granted to them. And I think this would fix a lot of problems. In the future, though, it seems that we all should look at all the PUDs, because there might be, I'm speaking now, I'm on the HOA board in Knollwood, and I know we dedicated properties for specifically a park. You have the Knollwood Park that is there. There might be other developments that also had this requirement to deed this property or reserve this property, and that maybe it wasn't codified. So what I would like to do is I'll present this item, but I'd like to make a motion to just recommend to the city commission that they begin the process of codifying the original recreation zoning that was afforded to the property when it was deeded to them, with the deed restrictions that were there, and the city's policy in the comp plan of requiring them to change that zoning to recreation after they receive the granted property. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. May I open this up to public? Yeah,
You may
yeah.
always open it up. Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You're the chair.
I don't like that power. All right. Yes, Mr. Katz.
David
please.
Katz, 67 Midwood Lane. I happen to live in the Meadows. Going all the way back to include, not to include Commissioner Kelly, but Commissioner Penserga, Commissioner Casello, including Commissioner Marlene Ross. I had always asked for them to budget the 100 or 125,000 for the Meadows portion. There's a nautical portion, which is divided by a tree line. Together, the properties equal about 9 acres, not just the Meadows, which is about just under 4, and Nautica is about 5. But they're under the same deed restriction that was given when developed. And I would encourage this board to go along with what Tom is suggesting. Some of the development staff is here on their phone, texting, whatever, but maybe they should listen to follow up with staff, because this can be staff initiated as well as commission initiated. You know, just to encourage that, and maybe as chair to follow up, as you know, within your purview as chair.
Yes.
Because this has got to be changed.
Yeah.
Because we just went through what he spoke about was this meeting of a group that wanted to do something. That's okay. That wanted to do something which was a great use, but that was not the spot to do it. And actually they had approached the city back in January about this, and we got wind of it and we fought it, and it's gone away. But it needs to be codified, just like what Tom said, through the comp plan. And if I could just ask something else, because I know Tom, I know Trevor, I know Butch, I know Chris. I'd like to ask what Mr. Harper and what Mr. McGuire bring to the board as far as background as members of the board. No, I'm serious. No, I'm just, come on, give me a break.
Give it to him, William.
Sure, I'll go first. New resident of the city the last 3 years. I graduated with a bachelor's in urban regional planning.
Okay, that's enough. That's cool. I got you there. That's good. Okay. And Mr. McGuire, other than the fact that you're in for the commission, what do you bring to the planning board?
Well, I bring a wealth of experience in terms of business. I own multiple businesses, and owning an advertising agency in Orlando and in our city. I've worked and developed and did marketing materials for some of the largest PUDs in Palm Beach County.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thanks. Appreciate your time. Any questions for Tom? This is
May I make a few comments?
Yes, go ahead. Hold on, Amanda. Let's hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, board member, for bringing this item up. Staff is already looking into the history.
Amanda, is someone vacuuming your room?
No. Do you get that? Hold on. It might be the AC. Let me see.
Roomba going on.
Is it any better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Sorry. I think the AC was blowing right on the computer. Being virtual is fun. Okay, so yeah, so the staff is looking into this item already. We are doing research on the origins and what policy applies to this situation. However, this does not necessarily need a board action. If staff is going to rezone these parcels, it does have to be notified and advertised appropriately. So it will need to come back to the board in a formal city initiated way. So there's no need for any action on this item now. Staff is currently working on it. Also, there was one other point. Yeah, so at the city commission meeting, there are two options that have been discussed. One was rezone parcels. The other one was to formally deed restrict parcels, which is being done on another parcel of interest. The difference between these two options is the rezoning takes a majority vote from the commission in order to pass it, whereas like a deed restriction, I believe, is a supermajority or a unanimous vote in order to remove that, since it is in city ownership. So there are different advantages to the different strategies, and staff is compiling information on all of this currently.
All right, so what's the time frame before we can see this before our board and before it can move through?
We're gathering information now. The next steps would be to go back to the commission to decide on a method forward, which method they would like to go on, and if this is more of an inclusive process, meaning are we looking at all the PUDs? It might be a bigger project, but we are gathering information to get direction from the commission.
Tom, you have follow-up?
Yeah, Amanda, what if I'll provide this information to the clerk, the information on the deed restriction for the property, that specifically when they granted it to the city of Boynton Beach, they restricted it and recorded it in the clerk of the court. There's not a lot of research to do other than read these three documents, and you'll know that irregardless of the zoning is currently PUD. So it's protected by law and by right because of the deed restriction. What I'm concerned about and what the community is concerned about is when somebody looks at the zoning map and sees it zoned PUD and not recreation, they then get all excited that there's a possibility to develop it. And that's what brought forth the recommendation that the city donate the property for them to develop this project. Had it been zoned recreation, which is part of our policy that was adopted in 1995, and had we done the research, which just would have been a very simple PAPA research, then we wouldn't have sent the developer to make a proposal to come to the community to even present it. So, but I understand there's a bigger issue with looking at the other PUDs. But what I'm going to do tonight is make a motion to just explain, that this information be brought to the commission and to the staff so that it doesn't take very long, that we can move it forward. I realize the process will take some time, but we're going to initiate it here because it came to the commission already. And I heard the comments from the staff and from the city commission, and it seemed like there wasn't really a lot of confidence in understanding the deed restrictions, the city's policy, the land use regulations, and the code. No offense, it's just that there was nobody handling the issue with clarity. So today and tonight, what I'm going to do is just simply, as a planning board, this was brought to our attention. It was brought to my attention as a planning board member living in the community, close neighbor to the community. And they asked me if I could look at the basics of planning, and I did, and the answers are very clear. And of course, you all would codify that. But I think the process, since it wasn't initiated by the commission and they were looking for direction, I felt that it's really our job as the planning board to start the process, make the recommendation to the commission that they look at all the HOAs to see if there's others that may have this minor oversight. There's no fault of anybody's. There's nobody to blame. It's just simply codifying it and changing the zoning to what it should be. So with that, I'd like to just simply make the motion
Please do.
that we recommend to the city commission that they recognize the zoning that was deeded to, when the property was deeded to the city, that the zoning was to be changed within 5 years to recreation, and that they look at the city's policy 1.3.1 in the comp plan, which specifically requires the city to change the zoning within 5 years of receiving the said granted property. That's my motion.
And to continue looking for more?
Yeah, and that the city
I'm sorry.
continue and
I'm leading you
whatever,
on.
and we realize it'll come back to the board and also go to the commission. But since there wasn't clear direction, I wanted to give that tonight. So at least the process would go to the next step with a recommendation to the commission on the changing of the zoning.
All right, I might have muddied it when I spoke up, but do we have clarity on that motion?
Well, if the question is to me is, like I previously said, staff is already undergoing this research, and there are many layers to it. If property was deeded to the city, doesn't necessarily mean there was a restrictive covenant. Just because it was deeded for a specific reason doesn't equal necessarily a restrictive covenant. There are also issues if land was, and generally, if land was used towards that private development's open space requirements or amenity requirements, and that wasn't deeded to the city. So this is fairly complex and is underway. We'll be happy to move forward a recommendation. I would ask generally that it is a little bit broader because there are facts in that motion that need to be verified and expanded upon.
Okay, we'll make it general and broad.
A general recommendation.
Yeah,
that
we
they
just want to plant our flag
review
on
the
this.
zoning.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
all. I mean, it's just a recommendation to look at.
I
it.
have one quick question about the process on the staff level.
Mhm.
If you are going through the process of researching every PUD within the city, and you don't make any moves until it is all the research is complete, and then you go and rezone all of them at one time, which might, like you said, if it's very complex, does it take a year, a couple of years? Or are you going to, as you do the research, begin the process of codifying and putting in rezoning, putting in on record as these as each PUD is completed the research? You're muted, Amanda.
No, keep trying. Keep trying. Nope.
How about now?
I was starting to think that you were messing with it.
I promise I'm not doing anything. So thank you for that question. I should have specified. So this conversation with the city commission was oriented around specifically Meadows Park and kind of grew in the conversation. So the plan, the way I understand it, the staff will be doing that research for the Meadows, Nautica, Knollwoods PUDs first and bring forward that information and talk about different options. And we'll be looking for the commission to do this more holistically or not. You're right, it is a huge undertaking if we are talking about doing this holistically. So it would need to come from the commission to do something like this because that would take a lot of staff time and staff efforts and resources. But we will be addressing specifically the Meadows and dealing with that site specifically since it came, that site came up specifically from the city commission.
Right.
So part and part, I think, is the answer to the question. We're doing part of it now and we may get direction to do something more holistically.
Okay.
Good. All right, so let's bring it back to the motion and make sure we got it nice and broad and general. And
I would like to recommend that the city staff review the zoning for the PUD of Meadows and Nautica Park site.
we've got a good one. Do I get a second?
A second.
Everybody wants to second. Take a pick, whichever one you want.
Butch can have it.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Didn't think so. Before we take off, one more item here. That's the holiday meeting, guys. We do have a quorum right here, right now. So if we want to try and nail this thing down, I believe the dates on the table are December 7th, 14th, and 15th. If we can't commit to it right now, we can still do it through the email and all that stuff. But I can tell you I'm good on the 7th and the 14th.
Is it the 7th or the 2nd? Oh, 2nd is a Friday.
7th, 14th, and 15th.
I'm good on the 7th, but not the 14th and 15th.
Okay.
7,
I'm
14,
good.
15.
Either one.
Any of them? There's three.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am only available on the 15th.
All right.
You have a.
And I may be able to be flexible at that point, so.
I'm out of the city on the 14th and 15th.
All right. So 7th is good. Butch, we'll take a break. He'll miss this one.
How many, you're not. the
Try and make it a
before yet,
really contentious one.
Or November meeting, she said also.
Was there a November date? I don't remember seeing.
November,
No,
December.
the suggestion from staff was to put a meeting in between the November date and the December date.
Amanda, can you send out another email confirming that December 7th? That way we can pull in some alternates or some others that might not have been here.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, we only need a quorum, so we would need 4 members present, but I will put this in an email.
We're good. Thank you very much. I'm assuming I won't get a fight for a motion to adjourn. You want the second to adjourn?
No, I wanted to fit something in, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to or not. It's
William
it's already
seconds.
been-
Motion to adjourn. Mr. Harper second. All those in favor? All right. Thank you very much. That was a passionate